You want to move to France? If you want to move to France, we have to talk about visas because you can't move to France without visas. But there are four questions, like prerequisite questions that you're going to need to ask yourself, and we're going to talk about them. If you're new here, I'm Diedre. I am a Jamaican. I currently live in France for over about 9 years in total. I work in French HR, and part of my job is to help foreign employees work through their paperwork. I'm also a foreign employee, so I have my own visas and paperwork to deal with. Outside of work, I help women move to France. And today we're talking about visas because visa information online is written for everyone, and you are not everyone. Before you can pick a visa, you need to know what you're picking for. And many people skip this part. There are four questions that determine which visa is yours. And we're going to talk about those four questions today. First, hear this. The visa is not the plan. It's the plan, but it's not the plan. The visa is the vehicle. It's the tool to get you where you're going. You might come into this research phase, this visa. What visa do I need to move to France? Thinking that the visa is the goal. Like, if I can just figure out which visa, then the move is sorted. Yes, but also no, because the visa is kind of like downstream of like your situation. So it flows from who you are and how you earn, what you're bringing, and what you're trying to build in France. So if you pick a visa before you understand your own situation, then one of two things happens, in my opinion. One, you pick wrong. Two, you spend months, like actual months, preparing for something that won't necessarily fit the life that you want to build when you move abroad and when you arrive in France. And that's exactly why we have four questions. And it's four questions that I get into. I did it myself when I moved to France twice. When I moved to Colombia, when I moved to India. Also, when I have my clients, right? We always go through these four questions. And if you haven't really sat down with your own situation yet and figured out these things, then these questions may, they're deceptively simple, but they're also quite surprising, right? And the tool that I built for that is called Your Friends Blueprint. And within that, it's a one-on-one session I have with my clients where we work through all of these visas, figure out your costs, figure out what your region is, and we try to map that to your situation so that you can make the best move to France, right? I'll talk about it a little bit later on in the video, but I link my one-on-one strategy session in the description so you can go and check it out whenever you're ready. Now for the four questions. Like I said, they sound easy, but they are not. Each of the question is like layered underneath. It has like this layer underneath it that you may not see until like you're like 6 months down the wrong path. So we're going to name them. Question one. How are you earning? This is the most important one. In France, your visa many times will be tied to how you make money. Your life. Life every day is tied to how you make money, especially if you're going to move to France. So you might think that this is like some easy question. Well, I have a job, or I will freelance, or I'm going to work remotely, or I'm not working right now, but I have savings. Done. Hmm, maybe not. Not so easy. Here's why. So when you're doing the application process to move to France for a visa, it doesn't judge your earning situation by like what you call it. France administration will judge or base the criteria of the selection process by what your earning looks like on paper in the specific month that you submit your application. So the gap between like what you call your work and what France administration will accept as your earning category might be much wider than you realize. Like I had this one client who was certain that they were a freelancer and they were a freelancer, but France did not see that way when we started charting and looking at her profile. France wouldn't see that way, right? Because the remote contract was not like straightforward. How her portfolio and how her earning was across like multiple bank accounts, things like this. So it was just not straightforward, right? They're like, you might be in transition. So you're like, you're leaving corporate, you're building something new. And that might mean you couldn't answer this question cleanly because your life is like mid pivot. So like how do you prove you're earning in a substantial way to move to France? If you're mid pivot, your accounts and what's on paper may not look that way, even though in reality you could very well be able to afford life in France. The last group is many of you, by the way. I've been in this group several times. That kind of like mid pivot because it's usually the part of where you decide, oh, I'm escaping. You remember my video where I talk about are you escaping or are you rebuilding life? Like, are you starting over? Many times when you're mid in the middle of a transition or you're mid pivot, you're trying to break, you're building something new. Sometimes it's not clear what's happening. That in between state is very, very real, very, very practical. And it's one of the most common situations that you might find yourself in at the start of this whole move to France process. So I'm not telling you like this is which category your earning situation falls into for visa purposes, because the honest answer is I can't do that from a video. Like the best way is for you to look at your own situation deeply. Um, the classification for that will not depend on detail. It won't fit in a YouTube format. So either you look at it deeply, or we do a one-on-one session, or we go through a workshop that I have where we can build that out and look at it in a bit more detail. So it's exactly the conversation I have one-on-one. But what I want you to take away from this question, from question one, is how do you earn? How are you earning? Is this. If you cannot answer how you're earning in a way that holds up on paper in documentation, you can't pick a visa yet. You're not ready to pick a visa yet. Full stop. This is the first one. So you need to get clear on that. Question two. What's the money looking like? This is about budget. You have a number in your head right now. So you have your income, you have your savings. Um, the amount you might think you'll have when you make the move, right? So your job or whatever. So let me tell you something about that number. It's probably wrong. I've talked about in my previous video, we talked about the cost of moving to France and just looking at all of the different gaps and categories of how your budget can be shifted in multiple ways through your move of France. And so that number of what's the money looking like, that question, the answer to that, the number may not be correct, right? Because number that you have about your budget for how you're going to move to France is never also the number that France is going to look at. So it's also a question of gross versus net, for example, pre-tax versus post-tax. Income from this year versus the rolling average that France uses for some of their categories. Savings sitting in one account versus savings spread across all three. Like, what's the money look like? How does it look? What's your budget? What exactly does it look like? The currency you hold it in. Where was it earned? What you can prove from where it came from. Every one of those distinctions changes what visa is open to you, because a freelancer, if you're looking for like an entrepreneur visa, it will look different versus if you have a passport talent visa and you have a job, or if you're doing a visitor visa or whatever. Like each of those distinctions will look different, right? And so there is this second layer, income and savings. Like the threshold for visas are not like one universal number. So the amount of money that you'll need will vary by visa category. and they can shift based on the year, on inflation. Sometimes it depends on the region, not too much, but sometimes a few times, right? How much money you have, what's the money looking like, can qualify you for one path, but it may not qualify you for the next. So the point is that what's the money looking like? It could change, right? That's the point I'm making. The relevant threshold of money, like the minimum amount for you, is going to depend on the answer to question one, which we already established is more complicated than it looks. So what I want you to take from question two about what does the money look like is this. The number you think you have is not necessarily the number that France is going to evaluate when you send over your visa application. So until you've translated your real financial picture into France's terms, you're guessing. Question three. What can you prove on paper? Stay with me. It's a question that many people, so many women, dismiss the fastest and sometimes they regret the most. If you haven't if you haven't heard it yet, France is France is a documentation country. Paperwork, paperwork, paperwork. I've said it so many times. The visa application isn't really about who you are, it's about who you are that you can prove on paper in the specific format that France accepts. That is the visa application, and that is the visa process. The visa application for France is about, it's not about who you really are. Like, we know who you are. You're probably like an amazing, responsible, um, resilient person with savings. But the visa application to move to France, it's about who you are that you can prove on paper in the specific format that France accepts. Two women with identical lives can have a completely different visa option based purely on what they can pull together in documentation. So you might not see this coming, but the documents that exist in your life right now and the documents that France will accept as evidence may not be the same set, right? Some of what you have, France will just not recognize. Some of what France wants, you've never been asked to produce before. Ask me how I know. Some of it was going to require translations, official translations from accredited translators that France will give you a list and you're like, these people do not exist in my country. What are you saying? I've had to work through so many workarounds with my own visa application process with what France is asking me, especially as it relates to translating documents and getting it fully accredited from a source that they will accept. And you're just like calling prefectures, calling embassies, calling ministries, so many things. You'd be like, how do we translate this? France is asking me for this, but this does not really exist in Jamaica. How do I get that? Like I said, some of the official documents that you're going to that France wants, you may never have been asked to produce before, and you're going to need somebody who knows the workaround for that. Some of it has expiration windows. What was it? Like they will want you to have, so depending on what you're applying for, your birth certificate that is recently issued in like the last 3 months, and the the accumulation, you're trying to like get all of the documents all together, and many times it will take more than 3 months. And by the time you get all the paperwork together with all the bureaucracy and the timelines and whatever, 3 months pass and your birth certificate is no longer valid and you have to start over again. Ask me how I know. Ask me how I know. I know. Okay? Some of these documents that France are going to ask you for may have expiration windows depending on the visa category that you're applying for. And the documents, all of them, the ones that you have, the one that France is asking you, that do not exist. Well, they exist, but you've just never been asked to produce them in the way that France is asking for. The official translation of things, the things that need to be the documents that have expiration windows, all of these things, all of those documents have to tell a consistent story. And that's a part that nobody talks about with the visa application process. It isn't just checking whether you have a document. France isn't doing that. They're checking whether the documents like agree with each other and make sense. I don't know, your stated income matches your tax filings, your work history lines up with your bank activity, the qualifications match the role you're being hired to. So those kind of things. If your paper trail like contradicts itself, even unintentionally, then that becomes like a little bit of a hurdle in your file and in the process, and it could become it could escalate to more problematic things. And so I've watched people discover this at like the worst possible moment. And it's not because their lives aren't legitimate. Of course not. It's just the way the process works. And you're translating between different cultures, different countries, different ways of doing things. And so it's not always easy to align and to document who you are on paper. Because this is also not something that you're accustomed to. You don't have to document who you are on paper in your home country, right? Because your home country exists for you by default in general. And so that process of translating who you are and that transfer of who you are, and documenting that and proving who you are on paper is new. And it can be like, it can become overwhelming or just a different process. But it's also, making it consistent is that nobody tells you that your documentation has to like have a story and it has to have like a consistent through line throughout the whole thing when you're building your file. And so what I want you to take from question 3, which is what can you prove on paper, is this. What can you document is not the same as what's true about you. And I'm not telling you to lie or embellish things. It's just what you can, like, objectively, what you're able to document. Mean it's not going to be the same as what's true about all of who you are. And both of these things matter, right? But only one of them gets you a visa. Question 4. What does your first year in France actually look like? I've talked about this so many times. This is the one that you might skip entirely in the process of moving. Only like when you arrive, you're just like, okay, so what do I want for my first year? And it would be great if you can have an idea before. So you are probably focused on getting in on arriving, which is normal. You might not be thinking about what you're getting into. And so this is the part I want you to really like hear is your first visa is going to be short. Most first visas for non-EU people coming to France are valid for about a year. A year flies by so quickly. So quickly. Sometimes it can be more, sometimes it's less, depending on the category. But for many people, I would say most, a big amount, a large percentage. Coming to France, your visa is relatively short. It's going to be like about a year, which means within months of arriving, you're already back into the system. Like you already have to start looking and figuring out what you're gonna do, how you're gonna do. Are you extending? Are you moving away? What are you and how you're going to be doing it? And you already have to start gathering documents again and proving you still meet the criteria or you meet a new criteria of paperwork or visas that you want. So you're already in renewal territory just a few months after you've arrived. Understand what your first year will look like. That's the question. And it's a question from a visa documentation standpoint, not all the fun things that you're going to do. Eh, and the visa file that you submit at the renewal stage looks at your life and it looks at the life that you built in that first year. And it's not the plan that you submitted in the first application. So the question isn't about can I get in? Question is can I stay in? That's what you want to ask. And those are different questions. They require different planning. And the visa that gets you in might not be the visa that lets you stay, depending on like what happens in your life between landing and renewing. Like I said, I've gone through like four, like no, maybe about six visas right now. And yes, many times the visa that I had first, I had to shift over because it's not the one that would allow me to stay in the way that I want for the future. So don't go and build the perfect entry plan and have a zero and don't have like a renewal plan or a how can I stay plan because you only have 1 year. You only have a few months to really enjoy and navigate before you start having to go back into the system of documentation and visa process. So visa approved, this is what you might have. Yeah, visa approved the first time, flights booked, apartment lined up, and then the first year goes by much faster than you'll expect. And then renewal hits and you realize that your situation shifted in ways that renewal doesn't accommodate because you can't like document it in a consistent way. So what I want you to take from question 4 is this. The visa decision is not a one-time decision. It's the first of at least 2 decisions within a year. And many people make like the visa application process like it's a finish line. You know, like here's a pattern that I see. There's women who move their move is smooth because they don't have to be the ones that have the most impressive profiles. They're the ones who sat with those 4 questions and answered them honestly or had a process for how they're going to confront and answer those questions before they fell in love with a visa category. They knew what was going on before they chose a visa. They didn't rush to pick, they got clear on themselves first and what they could prove on paper. People who get stuck or overwhelmed or sometimes even rejected from the visa process when they're trying to move to France is the ones who pick the visa first and try to make their life fit it. And 6 months of preparation can get you the wrong target. The information was right, but the fit was wrong. So those 4 questions are how you tell which one you're going to be. And once you've generally sat with those questions, and I mean like genuinely, then you can like look at the visa categories with clear eyes because clarity is what you need. And clarity is what I'm here to help you get. I do have a video like breaking down 5 of the most popular common visa pathways for non-EU women. Um, passport tunnel, artist visa, entrepreneur, student, visitor, etc. So I will link it as well and and you can check it out. Watch this video first. Finish this video and then you watch the second one on the different visa path. That is the order and it matters. So make sure that you sit with the 4 questions. And the 4 questions are about mapping your specific earning situation, understanding your specific numbers, understanding your documents, and your 1 year plan that includes renewal. And map those against what France might accept. If you need more work with this, it's not a video, this is a conversation. And it's exactly the work that I do in Your Friends Blueprint, where we sit down, we run through your real situations, and we run them through these 4 questions. And then we map your path to France based on your actual answers. It's really won't be able to get you all of that in one video. I've just given you the tip of the iceberg of how to really create a really great visa profile for your visa application for you. If you sat with those questions And when you sit with them and you feel that your answers are like pointing you somewhere, but you can't quite see exactly what, then that's a moment to book my one-on-one strategy session so that you can really clearly map your France blueprint. The link is in the description. I work with a limited number of women at a time, so like don't sit on it. And if you're not there yet, if you still need to like get honest with your own situation before you talk to anyone, of course, there are tons of videos here that I've shared. Just go through. I have a whole playlist. At the end of the video, you will see my playlist pop up as well. Um, that helps you to get through those questions, understand like what your situation is. Go watch that. Go watch my playlist. Binge it. You'll have so much fun. I'll see you in the next one. But that's all I'm going to talk about today. Understand those 4 questions before you look at your visa categories, and you'll be well on your way, so much further than the next person. And for sure, you'll arrive in France. I'm Diedre, and I help women move to France to build a life that they want, that actually fits them, because they deserve it, because you deserve it. See you at the next one. Ciao.